packing up and he comes up from the basement, could he be wearing any more clothes that he I don't know how you're going to do it.
I don't know, but you know, it's time. So you know, I'm going to go do it, and I'm not going to start until really after Christmas. So,
smart.
Or Jerry, I've got a plan. Probably not the best plan to say on a live call, but take like the first like couple of boxes of things that like you really cherish, like that are really important to you, and then just burn the house down. Because then you'll get the insurance check, and then you'll get all the money for the items inside the house, and then you can buy new items. And then you don't have to move it anyway. So you'd save money on the movers, you'd save mental health money, and you'd probably get an extra couple of bucks for your troubles.
So wait,
excellent, but we are being recorded, I think.
Wait, did we just go from maybe sneaking some stuff out of the house that we don't want anymore to insurance fraud? Is that the leap we just
and
made?
Arson? Don't forget arson, Chris.
I'm into starting over.
I was never here. Well, are we ready to talk about AI and recruiting?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the CXR channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
Okay, if you've just joined us, welcome to the 3 Different Stages of a Beard podcast. We're excited to have you here. I am Chris Hoyt, your host for the Recruiting Community Podcast, president of CXR, and I am excited. We do these every week, sometimes a little bit more. If you've never dialed in to listen, and we do actually stream these live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, cxr.org/podcast. But if you've never joined us, this is where we bring in folks from within the recruiting industry. They may be practitioners or leaders or folks that are doing something in the space, maybe in the services side, to talk about what's top of mind for them, what's keeping them up. We try to keep these to about 20-minute conversations, so they're pretty snackable, easy to get through. The beauty is, if you've joined us live on some of those platforms and there's a little chat window, you can jump right in. So we do our best to show you off if you do that. But if you've got questions for our guests, we ask you to just drop those in there, or even comments on the stream. You can do that too. We'll do a little fancy overlay on the screen, and we can share that. And we'll read those out loud for those who may be listening on a treadmill or a Stairmaster or a Peloton or whatever. And as a reminder, we don't do ads on the show. It is a labor of love. It doesn't make us any money. We're just doing it because it's kind of fun. But we like to promote the work that we think makes a difference in the space. People that are just doing cool stuff, shining a light on it. And I'll remind you, I've been doing this the last couple of shows because it's a weird time right now in the industry. And of course, end of year, tough time to lose your job. So if you do know of somebody in the recruiting space who's been hit with layoffs, downsizing, displaced, we're gonna ask you to point them over to cxr.org/jobs. Now we update that list daily. That's from over 100 companies that are recruiting for recruiting related roles. It is just recruiting jobs that should be in that list. And I think as of this morning, there were nearly 200 listed there. We have a little hiccup today on the maps. You can ignore the map at the top. I think that shows 10 in the world, but we've got quite a few more there. So you can flip down there. There's a new search that's been added as well, and notifications. So if you don't see something today, put in a keyword, save a search, and you're able to set that up so you get notifications. So with that, I want to go ahead and jump right in today because we've got kind of an interesting topic. You're going to hear the word Moneyball, and if you're in recruiting, you haven't heard it for a while. It's kind of been on the down low and out of the space, but I'm going to bring in Mark Gray. And for those who don't know, Mark is the head of hiring at Invisible Technologies. Mark, let's bring you on in out of the green room. How are you?
Good, Chris. How are you?
Good. Welcome back to the podcast. We did a top secret podcast a month or so ago that for some reason didn't stream. So this is technically your second time being on the show. So we're glad you have you here.
Yeah, I memorized the script from last time, so I'm excited to say it. Like, we just need to time it exactly so we can do a layover.
Same thing, yeah. Same graphics, overlay. We'll bring in the production team. Yeah. It's easy.
Perfect.
Stuff. And welcome, Jerry. We're glad to have you on the show today.
Pleasure being here.
All right, Jerry's going to have a lot of questions. And we are, if you know what phase of the beard everybody's in, you can go ahead and drop that in the chat too. We're happy to hear that. So Mark, before we jump in, for those who don't know who you are, and I guess Invisible Technologies as well, because you guys kind of, no pun intended, you kind of fly under the radar for a lot of work that you do. Why don't you give us sort of an escalator pitch of who is Mark and why should we be paying attention to Mark today?
Yeah, so I've been in the hiring space for 14 years, mainly in the tech startup and scale up space. For the last 6 months, I've been with Invisible Technologies. So Invisible is essentially the business within your business. We kind of, as you stated, operate under the radar. We're ops as a service or scale as a service. We essentially automate processes in any business, any industry, any vertical, whether they're super simple or very large and complex. And we essentially take all the repetitive work from your team and kind of manage that ourselves so that the people you have in your business can focus on being creative and adding kind of high output work. And yeah, that leads to a very interesting business with a very different ethos.
And what about yourself, Mark? Like, what a little bit of background on you. Like, how long have you been at Invisible, and where were you prior to that?
Yeah, so for the last 13 years, I've been in anything from a 4-person startup, scaling that up to 250, to some of the kind of larger tech companies like Zendesk, going through their European and APAC expansion. So I've been all the way at the bootstrap startup to the kind of luxurious tech offices where everything's free and you've got like 15 types of ham in the fridge. I don't know why that always sticks out in my head. That's when you know you're in a very fancy tech company. You've got a ham variety, not just beverage variety. And then, yeah, for Invisible for the last 6 months, and hiring at Invisible is very different because we have 3 types of people or groups that we hire for. So we have partners who are kind of equity holders, usually in senior leadership roles. We have specialists who are, usually in a very narrow focus, a very narrow category of work. And then finally, which is what's the bulk of the organization, is what we call agents. So agents are individuals all around the world. So we're fully remote, no offices company. We have agents in 74 countries at the moment who log in every day into our platform and help our clients automate their work. So yeah, it's fast paced. It's huge volumes at times in terms of hiring, and doing anything from hiring kind of general operators to AI trainers. There's a real broad mix of the type of profiles we're looking for. And to your point with Moneyball is how can we utilize data, statistics, some IO psychology, some social sciences to kind of model out what does a really good person in function X look like versus someone who might be better in a different function or in function Y. And how can we kind of create those baselines using kind of pure data, so that not only does Invisible know that they're getting someone that's going to really succeed, but arguably even more powerfully, you can tell the candidate that, hey, look, based off these 42 variables that we've pulled, we can actually say to a high degree of certainty that you're going to be really successful in this. Or hey, actually, you should consider this because we think you're going to be really good at this. And I guess that's kind of the broad strokes of what I do.
Yeah, so it's funny because we sort of joke about that Moneyball term, and I think when data really hit the scene for recruiting, right, and Moneyball came out, everybody had a presentation called Moneyball Recruiting. All of us want to be the Jonah Hill or the Brad Pitt of that story. And I forget the author right now. To escape Billy. Does anybody remember?
Billy? The security guard who wrote the book. Yeah,
have it in here somewhere.
Well, Billy Bean was Brad Pitt's character, but yeah.
Yep. So I'll have to pull the book up too for the author. I'm a little embarrassed, but anyway, all of us wanted to sort of be in that, and I think a lot of recruiting organizations felt like they were really, really taking that Moneyball approach. But I walked through some of the stuff that you've been doing and working on, and I think now we're years later, and we've got all of this, muscle behind AI that allows us to really create some insights and make some real decisions together. Can you, without giving away the formula, right? The secret formula to everything that's going on at Visible. But can you share a little bit around why it's different now as opposed to maybe 5 years ago when we all hoped we were doing Moneyball recruiting? Like what's different?
I think now the kind of proliferation of technology in general and how quick and cheap it is. I know cheap might not be the right term, but more affordable maybe is a better term. Getting access to these platforms and then pulling the data off it. So, within minutes, we can pull a huge amount of information on a candidate from whether, depending on the product you use, whether it's a video record-based product, whether it's a text-based product. But also, I think we're just getting much better at understanding what performance actually looks like in certain functions. That's not to say that there's some roles where it's still incredibly difficult. Software engineering, what's a good software engineer? How do you quantify that? It's very, very difficult. And then, the other end of the spectrum, you could argue sales roles, much easier because the output is very clear and tangible. And then there's roles that replicate that, especially in Invisible, where how we classify output and measure output is very clear in some of the both agent, partner, and specialist roles. Mm-hmm. So once you have the baseline, then it becomes an easier fix long-term, especially if you're hiring at scale or at volume. Because the more you hire, the more data you have, the better your model is, the more accurate it is. And, it's that kind of much more of a kind of easier cyclical effect of going like, okay, I think this might be wrong. Well, actually, no, the new batch of people we just hired just says actually it is correct. And, you can keep monitoring this over a period of time.
So for that to work, though, your baseline needs some validity, not just. And I'm not the expert here, right? But not just here's what I think a good, sales account manager or whatever role it is, X role would do. Mm-hmm. I've got to have some information that's proven, at least within my own organization, right? Like, how does Invisible go about that, or how long does it take to sort of put a valid baseline together like that?
Yeah, there's a few. I think one thing you have to factor in is like the Price's law, which is the square root of the total amount of participants account for 50% of the output, which is also why, the impact an individual has as a company scales actually increases. So, which is kind of, you wouldn't think it, but, if you think of the amount of home runs hit by baseball players, like I don't know how many baseball players there are on a roster or how many teams, you'll see that it's actually, it applies in everything, amount of records sold by artists, it doesn't matter. So if you apply that to an organizational level and then like a department level, so we can go, okay, there's 100 agents in this team, 10 of them are accounting for most of the output. And then when we look into the data, like actually, we can see it might not be a perfect 10. It might be like, 8.97 or an 8.45 or something close to that. Then we can go, okay, here are the 8 that we want to kind of replicate. But for this to be a fair assessment, we'll do the test on all 100. From that, we can then break it down. Okay, here are the top 10%, top 25. Here's the midpoint. Here's the bottom 25. And then we can start looking for patterns and analyze that against it and the validity of our statement. So we can go, okay, big 5 traits. Is there an impact on openness or conscientiousness on certain performance groups? Yes, there is. Okay, well, that's an important factor. Is there a factor in task variety, which is like 10 different varieties, which is 10 things that measure how individuals approach tasks? Do they prefer the same task over and over again? Do they prefer a variety of tasks? Are they autonomous? All of these things we can start to measure. And then once we have that, we have like a very straightforward baseline of like 18 variables. Mm-hmm. And then you can add others like, okay, is English a requirement? Well, we can do English tests. Is, in our, hiring, because we're hiring all over, they have good Wi-Fi. That's a requirement. That's a variable that we have to consider. And then you can kind of plug this in, and then you can start building out kind of tabulated scores, which removes the kind of gut feeling aspect of hiring completely, but it also means that we can hire at scale with a very small team. There on the agent hiring team, there's me running it whilst we look for a director of agent hiring. Shout out if you're interested. And then there's we'll
throw that back up there. Anybody who wants to reach out to you.
There you go. and there's 2 recruiters. And to give you context of how well this is working, with 2 full-time recruiters based on the other side of the world, so our team's geographic, we hired 361 agents last month with 2 recruiters. And the reason we can do that is A, the data doesn't lie, B, the model keeps improving, C, we have built a lot of automations in Greenhouse so that it kind of removes all aspects of the move candidate to next stage. It's like, well, if candidate hits X score, they automatically get moved to next stage, next assessment sent, or it's sent to the coordinator to schedule time with the hiring manager. So we've kind of really overly optimized the hiring funnel so that, 400 candidates come in and we know, okay, well, of that 400, maybe 80 will make it to this stage and that stage and that stage. And we're getting better and better at predicting that.
I have to tell you, based on a conversation Jerry and I had recently, I suspect we know about roughly 130 heads of talent that would say that's not over optimized. That's just about right.
Yeah. I love it. And the fact of the matter is, we've been doing these kinds of things for over 100 years. The problem is the access to the kind of data is what's really changed. So it seems to me, Mark, that one of the things that's really advantageous for the kind of business that you're in is your ability to tap into the data that can come in literally in real time and be able to use that data to move things forward, as opposed to the ways people would have collected it 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
For sure. And your ability and the amount of people required to collect that data.
Yeah.
If you think about statistical modeling 10 years ago, you need a
so
team.
So let me ask one key question though, from my perspective. So once you have acted on the basis of what is the equivalent of concurrent validation, do you then track or follow the success and measure the relative success of those folks that you've now hired, so that you demonstrate, if you will, that what you're doing is predictive?
100%. So anyone that we've collected information on through the hiring process, even if they leave, we hold on to them because we want to start understanding what that pattern looks like. Is there a certain predisposition for people to leave this role or function as a result of some of the data we've captured? Yeah. Or, is there something we've missed? Are they leaving because they're frustrated because they can't do well in the job? Well, then that's something for us to kind of look for in the margins to understand why is this happening. So it is this constant, the more we hire, the more information we have, the better we get at actually being able to place people in the right agent function or the specialist function for that matter. So yeah, 100%. Otherwise, it's just, okay, this sounds about right. Off we go. Let's just keep the same model for a year. We have to be constantly upgrading it and changing it.
I would hypothesize that very often what we've done is overbalanced the decision process from the employer point of view on can they do the job, which is really a lot of the variables that you're talking about collecting. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that I think is the choke point is the other side of that decision is the decision of the candidate often lacks information that might have influenced their choice to accept the offer, if you will. Knowing perhaps that the person they're reporting to is an asshole as opposed to a wonderful developer. If the information is left off, it may impact not the fact of whether they can do the job, but will they do the job long term? And fundamentally, if you're capturing some of those kinds of elements long term, you're improving not just the ability to identify that people can do the job, but you're increasing your ability to actually provide better information to the candidate to make a better choice.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's called, oh God, I'm going to butcher this, but TET's model for personality trait-based performance, something very boring and academic. And it actually hits upon exactly what you're bringing up is, so you have at the top, the individual's personality, And then on the left here, you have, the function of the work, the team, and the kind of, you could argue it's like psychological safety. How much control does this person have over their job? How much of the decisions can they make? Mental well-being. There's a lot of ways you can interpret that. And then that impacts their job performance, which then links to their intrinsic and extrinsic reward center. And then it just constantly loops. So yeah, you're 100% right. And that's something we're trying to understand now as well, is kind of team dynamics. Are certain people with certain traits more qualified to work with managers with certain traits than others? The problem is it's extremely complicated, and I don't think we have the processing power, to be frank.
Well, it becomes complicated as you increase from, not just the decision of the hiring manager, but now the decision of the candidate, and now the decision of how does this all fit together in terms of team dynamics, because nobody does a job by themselves anymore. At least very few do. Most of us are doing it in collaboration with a team. So understanding that team dynamics may be that other band of success in terms of predictive validation.
Yeah, one thing we are looking to do is with certain projects, they're much larger than others, and there's obviously much more teams that we can look into. So what we're trying to understand is, if we look at, let's say, 100 individuals, and let's say there's 10 teams of 10, there's not exactly, it's a bit more varied, but we can then go, okay, within those 10 teams, there's high performers, there's midpoint performers, and there's low performers. But are there any clusters whereby the median and low range is significantly higher than the other teams? And then you could go, okay, is that a result of the management team, or is that a result of team dynamics, or is that a result of, well, the 10 people in this team are actually much more better fitted for the role? So this is another bit of diving that we're going to start to do early next year. There's a few things we have to have in place before we can really accurately dive into this, but it's probably the next chapter of what we're looking to do, which is really interesting, because it's like, well, okay, we believe that it's because we're really good at hiring and we bring these people in, they're doing an amazing job. But is there, the team dynamic factors, which is, okay, the manager's exceptional, or the way the team is clustered works really well for a specific reason. And then, diving in and trying to understand what that reason is. So there's so much we want to look into and try and understand, because I think just going, hey, yeah, we're amazing at our jobs, that's why we've hired such great teams. As much as an ego pad it is, I know it's just not the reality. There's so many more forces at play.
So
like you're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it occurs to me that you are creating, while you're getting rid of historic recruiting challenges with this sort of new way of recruiting, you're creating new recruiting challenges for yourself. And I would imagine that one of those, the biggest, might be the data collection. Because you mentioned earlier 40 plus points, right? Points of interest or points of data on a candidate. I would assume it's easier to gather internally, but then my wheels start spinning like, how are you collecting all of that information? Certainly internal. Are there automated touch points throughout my career at Invisible? Is every project wrapped up with a survey or a report out? I mean, that's a lot of information to be pulling. And then you're talking about team dynamics. That's a whole nother set of data collection.
Yeah. So some of it happens on the application stage. So as I mentioned,
Sure.
Where are they based? Wi-Fi speed. There's 3 or 4 more. I just emptied my brain right now. And then at the application phase, there's in some roles anyway, there's a written assessment, which gives us some indicators, but also there's a video AI interview component. And then obviously there's the performance data, which, happens every 2 weeks. And then, obviously within that, there's additional sets of data. So it does keep getting bigger and bigger. And now we're looking into the main thing is how can we gather this without it becoming a burden on the candidate's experience?
Yeah.
So it's kind of what's the greatest thing you can tell someone in recruiting and say, well, the greatest interviewers are the ones that conduct an interview and the candidate walks away going, well, that was a great conversation. And it's kind of the same thing with gathering data. It's how can you take it without being hey, you need to spend 30 minutes on filling out this form for, endless amounts of questions. We don't want to do that. And there's a lot of give and take. So take some data from them, and then we'll like jump on a call and go, well, this is why Invisible is great. This is why it's interesting. What are you looking for? Great. Okay, well, the next step's this. We take a bit more, and then it's that constant seesaw.
Is there data that's collected? Sorry, Jay, I got one more.
Yeah.
Is there data that's collected with regards to the DE&I front? So looking from an inclusion and an equity standpoint within the organization, is that also get pulled into that calculation?
Yeah, so we pull all that outside. We actually pull that outside of the hiring process. That happens after someone kind of comes on board through our HRIS.
Mm-hmm.
We were at one point looking at the impact of country culture and attitude towards employment. But like that was just a rabbit hole we didn't want to touch because it was like way too complicated.
I was going to say, I could see you getting lost in that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm not touching this. But yeah, I think it's at the moment, I feel like we have 74 different countries from agents, and then I think the organization as a whole is in like 77 countries at the moment. So like it's pretty much we're trying to get everyone in the world. If you know any good recruiters in Antarctica, that's one we need to check off soon. So, but yeah,
that's pretty cool. The one question that I had left to ask at the moment is you're not obviously hiring every single person who goes through the process. You've improved obviously from an efficiency point of view so that your funnel is better organized from a shape point of view. But those folks who do not go forward, what is your practice or policy in relation to how you help them better understand what you've learned about them that suggests that we should not go forward?
Yeah. So at the moment, depending on the role and the function, we're actually able to give a very clear reason why. We'll be like, look, one of the processes we're running now, which is actually quite a big project, is we can do a very clear assessment around natural language processing. And from that and their explanation as to why they approached the task the way they did, we have a pretty high success rate at understanding the people that will succeed or fail. And we're very open about that feedback. We're like, look, unfortunately, you didn't succeed. And what historically we've seen from individuals that come on board that don't do too well on this assessment is they struggle for a few months and leave. And we, obviously we're putting it in a very nice way, but essentially, we don't want to bring you in for 3 months for you to just leave and burn out and be upset. What we want to do in the long term, I don't know if we have 3 minutes, I'll rattle through it. We want to create a non-stop nurture campaign. So the more data we get, the more we start to understand roles and functions and outputs from a data perspective. Well, if a candidate comes in and they're not a fit for anything we have now, we can actually already tag them and go, hey, you're not good for this, but these 5 projects we think you'd be brilliant for. We don't know or have a timeline as to when more slots are going to open up, but when they do, we're definitely going to contact you. We create a tag for that candidate, and the second we open a new role for any of those 5 projects, everyone tagged on that gets auto sent an email going, hey, we actually have 10 openings on the team, or we have openings. Let's set up a time to talk. So once again, we're just trying to constantly, I don't want to say recycle candidates, but I think a lot of companies waste opportunities when people kind of show up and they're like, not a fit now, reject, or, put them in a nurture campaign and we'll send like 1 email a month about the company. No one ever gets converted. So we want to constantly be evolving on how we kind of bring people in and kind of keep them in the loop for however long it needs to be.
Cool. Thank you.
I love it. Oh, Michael Lewis. It's Michael Lewis. Michael
That's
Lewis.
the author.
Michael Lewis.
Dang, something you just click. Well, okay. So, Mark, I want to ask you as you take us out, if you were going to write a book about the state of things right now that you're working on, right, with the AI and the recruiting, and you can't use the word Moneyball. So, if you're going to write a book about that, what would the title of that book be?
Cash Sphere. No,
I guess technically that counts.
Yeah. What would the title be? Well, it depends if I want to be. It seems very in vogue right now to have like very inflammatory book titles that are very inflammatory about topics that aren't that flammable. So it's like, you've been hiring wrong. ... No, I think it would be. I don't. This is probably why I wouldn't write a book, because I couldn't even think of a title. How to fix all the world's problems using data, and there's a thought behind that.
Yeah.
Talent market is arguably the most inefficient market in the world, and it costs. I think what does it cost? U.S. economy $20 billion a year, I think, in lost productivity.
Wow.
So, if you save even a fraction of that productivity, that fixes roads, more charitable donations. If you implement that throughout the world, and there's less inefficiency in hiring, and people are actually happier. Pharmaceutical industry is going to be upset, obviously, but everyone's going to be happier and doing better work and actually enjoy their work. So yeah, there you go, fixing all the problems.
All right.
Everyone knows what they should be doing and doing it well. There you go.
All right. So who gets your first signed copy?
You guys can wrestle over it.
Beard wrestling. We'll do some sort of
exactly. Sounds good.
All right. Well, Mark, great to have you on technically again. We're super excited. Much gratitude for you cutting out your schedule. I know you're super busy, so we're really grateful that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much.
No, pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much, Chris and Jerry. It was a pleasure.
You got it. I'm going to shove you guys over in the green room, hang out for a little bit. We'll be right back. All right. Really quickly, I just want to remind everybody, if you have not checked it already, head out over to cxr.work. See if your organization qualifies to join. We've got about 130 companies and brands. That is over 5,000 recruiting leaders and professionals that are part of the Career Crossroads community. We know what we've been doing. We've been doing it collectively for just about 30 years. And also a last reminder, even if it's not you that's been displaced or impacted by layoffs, if you know a recruiting professional that's looking for work, point them to cxr.work/jobs. Again, this morning, 200 some odd recruiting jobs out there from some pretty well-respected organizations and companies. And with that, I think you're going to be excited as we head into the holiday season. We've got some best of sessions coming up. So you're going to get to hear our team selected some of the best of podcasts that we did this year. And you're going to get to hear those with an intro and find out why they thought they were so awesome. So with that, we're going to cut out and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/Career Crossroads, and on Instagram @CareerXroads. We'll catch you next time.